All right, so we're now going to welcome Dan Rosen, senior writer for NHL.com, to the show. Dan, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. How you doing?
Doing great.
One of us is doing better than the other. I'm an Islander fan. He's a Ranger fan, so we both got each other in two games. But give us your take on these first two games between these two teams.
All right, so you said you're an Islander fan, and he said he's a Ranger fan, right?
Yep.
So I think we've seen the best and worst of both teams in two games. I think we saw the absolute best of the New York Islanders in the first game of the season, and really, I mean, I can't imagine the Rangers being any worse than they were in Game 1. And to be honest, David Quinn feels the exact same way. And then you flip the script, right? I mean, 2 nights later, I think we've seen the best of the Rangers. I can't imagine them being that much better than they were in that game, the 5-0 win. And you really saw the absolute worst of the Islanders. Maybe the worst game that they played under Barry Trotz in a very long time. Maybe the worst game they've played under Barry Trotz since he's taken over as coach. And he's right. It started out with them injuring their starting goaltender in warmups. I mean, you can't shoot high on a goalie in warmups when he's not expecting it, especially. And that shot from Clutterbuck caught Varlamov under the mask and above the left shoulder, probably either in the collarbone or the throat area. I don't know, but he was out. And tough spot for Sorokin to go in, and they didn't help him out at all. But the Rangers really played well. They really played well. So I think we've seen the best and worst of both teams so far, and they'll find themselves somewhere in the middle. And it's just a matter of, can both of them find themselves a little bit closer to their best in the middle, because that's going to be the big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And that Varlamov shot was a little bit reminiscent of the Lundqvist incident. I remember a while back against Carolina, kind of took it up high in the neck throat area. So I hope he's all right. And I mean, it was kind of a war on social media between the fans and David Quinn after Game 1, between the lineup changes, and you could read the amount of people that were criticizing it. But then it paid off, right? They looked so much better in Game 2. So my question to you is, do you think that if they continue to go on a path similar to Game 1, and that Game 2 was a fluke, if you will, which I don't believe it will, I think that that's how they play, do you think he could be on the hot seat come season's end if they miss the playoffs and miss it badly?
Not if they miss the playoffs. If they miss it badly and they don't show improvement, then I think any coach would be, to be honest with you, regardless of if it's David Quinn or anybody else. I mean, he's in his third year. The idea is to continue to show progress, and they showed progress from year 1 to year 2. Year 2, they were showing a lot of progress, and then the pandemic hit and the season got paused, and they didn't come back well in the bubble. But I think in a way you kind of throw that out because it was so unique and different, and they were young, and I think you could toss that out. It's a question of, now can they pick up where they left off, where they were in March? And they did not in Game 1, and it was alarming, and David Quinn used that word, alarming. But I don't think they're as good as they played in the second game of the season against the Islanders Saturday night, but they're better, way better than they played in the first game of the season. And I understand the social media aspect and the fans and all that, but I always take that and understand, like, it's still a minority of the fan base, what's on social media, and especially the vocal people on social media are a minority of the fan base, and it's a very opinionated minority, and I get that, but he's coaching the hockey team as he sees fits, and you can't argue with the moves that he made, because they obviously worked, and now you got to massage it a little bit here. But if they miss the playoffs badly, like if they finish last in the division, then I think you have to reevaluate. But if they're competitive and they're in the fight and they miss the playoffs, I think that's progress for the Rangers. I think progress for the Rangers this year is the development of Lafreniere, the continued development of Capo Caco, the development of Keandre Miller. Keandre Miller, I commented to a fellow writer last night, this guy's going to be an 8-time All-Star. I think he's that good. And the development of Shesterkin. They're still the youngest team in the league. And I think that needs to be remembered here. They're the youngest team in the league. And when they win the Stanley Cup, if that were to happen, if they get to the Stanley Cup final, Jack Johnson's probably not going to be on the team. Brendan Smith's probably not going to be on the team. But those guys have to play a role now to help the Rangers get to where they want to go, because you cannot have you can't have 12 first-line forwards. You can't have 6 first-pair defensemen. You got to balance it out. And Jack Johnson is a much cheaper version right now of Mark Stahl. I think Mark Stahl's a better defenseman, but he was also making a lot more money, and you have to factor that in. The salary cap not going up. You got to make these types of decisions. But I think they're going to be fine. I like David Quinn as a coach. I think he's good as a coach. He doesn't hand it to anybody. You got to earn it. And I like that philosophy.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said about Miller, I think that the way he looks so poised right now defensively, especially at that young age, 2 games in, it is kind of impressive. And he really hasn't made that many glaring mistakes yet, which I like to see in a young defenseman too. But you mentioned Jack Johnson, and in game one, he played 21 minutes. Now that was attributed to the penalty situation. They took 8 penalties, and he's on the kill. And in game two, he played a little over 13. Much more balanced. You didn't really hear his name much as far as miscues go. Fox helped him out with his speed, I believe. And do you think we'll see more of his role in game two be a more prevalent role where it's around 13, 14 minutes, not going to be used as much just in certain situations?
That's why they signed him, to play that type of role. They didn't sign him to play 22 minutes a night, right? I mean, that's not why he's there. But he's on the penalty kill, and if you have to kill 8 penalties, Jack Johnson's ice time is going to go up. It's just the nature of it. I mean, it's going to happen, and you're not going to win if you have to kill 8 penalties. And David Quinn mentioned that the other night, and he's right. You know, the Islanders had to kill 8 penalties last night. They lost 5-0. You know, so right. I mean, it's hard to do. You're killing 8 penalties. You're taking a quarter of the game where you're on the PK. A little over a quarter of the game where you're on the PK. It's almost impossible to win when you have to do that. Jack Johnson was signed to a 1-year contract to play 13 minutes a night on the third pair for the Rangers. Now, right now, he's not on the third pair, but Adam Fox is going to play more than Jack Johnson. If that pair stays, Adam Fox is going to bounce around. He's going to play more. And by the way, I thought Adam Fox looked perfectly comfortable on the top power play unit too.
He did.
So we'll see how it plays out and how things settle in. But Jack Johnson is there to play 13, 14 minutes, not to play 21 or 22. If Jack Johnson's playing 21 or 22 minutes a night, the Rangers, on a regular routine basis, the Rangers are in trouble.
Yeah, but to follow that up, do you think that there's a possibility they take him out for Smith when they re-enter D'Angelo? Because I thought Smith looked very impressive last night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jack Johnson's a 6'7". So is Brendan Smith. He's a 6'7". He's in that mix. And if Tony's going to come back in and play the way Tony needs to be able to play, then it's either going to be Johnson or Smith coming out of the lineup. You're not taking out Lindgren. You're not taking out Fox. You're not taking out Miller now. You're certainly not taking out Trouba, right? So it's got to be one of those other guys. And that's why they're there. And I think fans, the overreaction we saw was exactly what I just said. It was an overreaction. You have to understand it was one game. Things didn't break right. They killed a ton of penalties. Jack Johnson didn't look great. His minutes were high. And he is a 6'7" defenseman along the lines with Brendan Smith here. He's a stopgap, sort of, so to speak, too. And if Tony comes back, when Tony D'Angelo comes back in the lineup, I don't know that it'll be Tuesday against the Devils because David Quinn very rarely changes a winning lineup. But when Tony D'Angelo comes back in the lineup, you'll see either Johnson or Smith sit, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And I don't think the lineup has to change by Tuesday because they did win and they looked pretty good in that win. So what do you think that Kakko, Lafreniere, and Miller have to do to use their size and skill to create offense? Because in game two, we saw Kakko score. Lafreniere has looked pretty impressive. Miller had a couple of chances. The puck slipped off his stick. But one thing I noticed is that when they do tend to struggle, they get a little passive. They stay to the outside. And these are bigger guys. Kakko's not small. Lafreniere's not small. They don't necessarily have that drive. We haven't seen a big sample size with Lafreniere, but we did with Kakko. Right. So what do you think they have to do to kind of get that going where they're continually using their size and talent?
Yeah, you're 100% right. What you just said with the small sample size versus the larger sample size. I like what I've seen from Lafreniere so far. I think he's used his body. He's been physical. He's skated well. He's gotten on the inside a few times. There was a shift last night where he was pretty much getting abused by Matt Martin, and he popped up every single time, and it was a tough shift. He got knocked down 3 times hard, and he popped up each time. I think that was good. I think he's been dangerous at times. I think he just got to continue along those lines, and once he gets one, it'll start coming a little bit more easily. Not easy, but the confidence will grow a little bit. And I like it. You remember from game one, he was playing on the third line left wing. Game two, he's playing on the second line right wing. So there's a settling in factor here as well for Lafreniere. For Kakko, I 100% agree with you. When he gets passive, he's not nearly as effective. And that's the case with most players. But when Kakko is assertive and he is skating well and he wants the puck and he's getting on the inside, he is so dangerous, especially off the rush. And we saw it off the rush again, in the second game of the season against the Islanders, where he came into the zone. He was looking to shoot. He was setting himself up. It was a great play by them to set him up, to get it from DiGiuseppe to get it to him. And it was a hard one-timer. It was a great shot. I think that's huge for his confidence. The kid's got so much skill and power. And I think he's still just putting it all together. One of the things that we tend to do, everybody, is when a guy comes into the league with as much hype as Lafreniere and as much hype as Kakko, we expect them to be instant success stories. It's harder to do in the National Hockey League, I think, than it is in the NBA or the NFL, when you're a number one draft pick. When you come in as a number one draft pick in the NFL or the NBA, you are usually an instant success story because a lot of the things revolve around you. In the NHL, it's a team, far more of a team need, and you have to find your way in to the concept of that team. Because if you're a number one pick in the NFL, a lot of times it's a quarterback, right? In the NBA, it could whatever position is, but you're getting a ball a lot more. In the NHL, it's a lot different. And I think we just need to give these guys some time to develop the right way. Not everybody is McDavid. Not everybody is Matthews.
Before I get to a few Islander questions, Pavel Buchnevich had a tremendous game yesterday, and I heard he had an amazing camp as well. Is this the kind of player that could be a threat like what we saw last night, each and every night for Coach Quinn?
Well, yeah, and David Quinn has really raved about Pavel Buchnevich. I think you can go back to when they came back for training camp 2.0 last year, before going to the bubble. Like, he liked Buch a lot, and he has really liked Pavel Buchnevich since the start of this season, training camp right on through. He was dangerous. He looks more assertive. Like, similar to what I was just saying about Kakko, is that I think Buchnevich is figuring it out and how to be assertive and when to be assertive, and he looks good. And David Quinn said it last night, and he's 100% right. Pavel Buchnevich is killing penalties. When did you ever think that Pavel Buchnevich was going to be killing penalties? But he's earned it, and he's playing very well. And if he continues to play that way, that becomes a very dangerous. It's already a dangerous top line with him, with Mika and Kreider. But if Buchnevich starts to continue to play that way, that's a legitimate top elite number one line in the NHL.
Yeah, how do you move him if like, I know that's been rumored? You don't, right? You have to keep.
You don't. You don't. You have a number one center. You have a lock as a number one center, right?
Yeah.
But Panarin doesn't have to play with him. Kakko doesn't have to play with. I'm talking with Mika. Panarin doesn't have to play with him. Kakko doesn't have to play with him. Lafreniere doesn't have to play with him, because it works. Kreider, Zibanejad, Buchnevich work, and Buchnevich is playing. To me, it's usually two guys on a line, and then the third guy has to complement them. And with that line, Buchnevich is complementing Kreider and Zibanejad very well, and that's the way it needs to stay. And if he continues the way he's played, he'll be a dangerous scorer too. He already is.
Yep.
A dangerous scorer and a scoring threat each and every night, except last night. Matt Barzal had a great opening night where he looked more like a two-dimensional player, getting back, making some plays in his own zone. Took a penalty, but that's going to happen with the style that he plays. And then last night, was abysmal. 3 offensive zone penalties.
That was bad.
He just didn't look like the same player. And, when he signed his 3-year deal, he said, I'm trying to get my play to the next level. Trotz said that's his goal. Get Barzal to this next level. Do you think after the game that we saw on opening night, is that the type of game that he's got to play each and every night? Or is there even another level Barzal could get to?
Well, if he plays the way he played on opening night each and every night, that is another level for Barzal. Right, I mean that is the next level, is the complete 200-foot top line centerman, and he's developing into that under Trotz over the first 2 years, no question about it. And now he's got to continue that development. And to me, it's not necessarily about playing reaching the next level. It's about playing that way consistently. That to me is reaching the next level. It's not having a great night and then having an off night, which he's had obviously. But again, everybody for the Islanders had an off night in the second game of the season. He was not alone on that train. There's no question about it. So, but yeah, the next level is the level we saw from Matt Barzal in game 1. And that's a level he can consistently play at. He's just got to be able to do it. And to me, when Barzal plays that way, the Islanders are going to follow suit as well. They play a great system play. And if they can get their number one center to buy in every night, and I think he does buy in every night, it's a matter of consistently doing it, they're going to be in great shape.
How does Trotz get Barzal to stop taking offensive? It seems like every penalty he does take offensive zone, and it killed the Islanders yesterday. It's just demoralizing because, granted, if you're in your own zone, you're trying to break up a play and stop a scoring chance. But when you take offensive opportunities away from your club, I mean, do you sit him? Should he have been benched for the rest of the game? Like, how do you go about, if you were Coach Trotz, how do you go about fixing this play? Because it's unacceptable.
It's a great question. I don't know how you stop guys from taking offensive zone penalties other than you just kind of tell them, like, that's a terrible penalty. Do not do that again, right? Yeah. Just don't do that again. Get out of the guy's way. Don't interfere. There's no reason for you to interfere behind the net. There's just no reason for you to do that. I don't think you sit him. I don't think that's the nature of it. I mean, if it continues, yeah, then you sit him. But when it happens, I don't want to overreact to one game, right? I mean, everybody overreacted to the way the Rangers played in the first game of the season, and nobody was overreacting to the way the Islanders played. It was almost sort of expected, right? I mean, they're a conference finalist. This is the way they're going to be. The Rangers come back. They play great. Let's not overreact to the way the Rangers played in the second game, but let's not overreact to the way the Islanders played. That was not Islander hockey, what we've known it to be, and what we've known it to be under Barry Trotz is that doesn't continue. Like, if they have a bad one, they usually come back with a good one. So I would expect to see that from the Islanders, from Matt Barzal, a little more discipline, better in the system play, better puck control, all of those things. So I don't want to overreact to just one game.
Looking at the way the divisions break down and all that, do you think the Islanders are a Stanley Cup contender, or do they really need that, that missing offensive piece?
No, I think they're a Stanley Cup contender. I do. I don't think they're missing anything. I think if they play the way they're capable of playing, they can beat anybody in the league, and they can certainly beat anybody in the league in a 7-game series. To me, they're one of the hardest teams to play in a 7-game series because they're not going to give you anything, and they're not going to deviate most nights from what they do. You know exactly what you're going to get, and it's going to be a hard game for you. And it's going to and look, Pavel Buchnevich said it last night. I actually asked him, how important was it? Well, I think I said, what was the impact of getting that first goal and how you guys played the rest of the game? They scored 2 minutes and 12 seconds into the game. And he said, if you got to get a lead against this team, because if you don't, they tighten it up defensively and they make it very hard to penetrate, and it makes it very difficult for you. If they have to chase the game, it makes it a little bit harder. And the Islanders are, not as good of a team chasing the game as they are when they're in command of the game, as most teams are. But the way the Islanders play in their system, when they're in command of a game, it's almost impossible to come back.
We spoke about this before you came on, actually, about how this Islander team, if they get a lead, are probably the hardest team to come back on. But when they don't play their game off the bat, they give up that first or second goal, it's tough for them to win because they just don't have the offensive talent, the offensive system that many other teams do, like Toronto, where they just have to outscore the opponent. That's the goal. And I think for the Islanders, you saw in game 1, they got out to an early lead and they controlled pace of play. But when they fail to do that and fail to move their feet, it's not going to end with 2 points.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they are not built to chase games. They're just not. There are some teams that are the way they're built. I think look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning can get down in a game and come back. They can take command of a game and not give it up, right? I mean, they can win in so many different ways. I'm not saying the Islanders can't come back. They can come back, but I think if they're down multiple goals, it's harder for them to come back than it is for some other teams, just simply because of the way that they're built to play. But they're built to play in command from the start of a game. And most times under Barry Trotz, we have seen the Islanders play in command from the start of the game. So, again, that's why I don't want to overreact over just one game.
Understood. And I mean, I think both fan bases clearly did that in game 1 and 2. But let's get to a few more questions, some NHL stuff for you. If you had to pick one dark horse, one team to make the playoffs in this chaotic year, what's your team?
Well, I picked the Montreal Canadiens to not just make the playoffs, but I picked them to win the division, the North Division, to finish first in that division. And from what I've seen in 2 games, I'm not changing it. I know they lost to Toronto 5-4. I think that they can play those types of games and win them. And then they were just great against Edmonton to win 5-1. And Edmonton's goaltending was bad, but I mean, they were very good. I think that's a 2-team. I think Toronto and Montreal, that's going to become a 2-team race for first place in the North. And I love the moves that Marc Bergevin made in the offseason. Carey Price is elite, no question about it. Less of Carey Price will be more of Carey Price. And by that, I mean Jake Allen coming in as the number 2 there now, having him spell Carey Price every once in a while and still give the Montreal Canadiens a chance to win. That's going to be great. It's going to take a little bit of the stress off of Carey Price, and it's going to make Carey better. I like Toffoli signing. I like Joel Edmondson. I love Josh Anderson and that trade that they made for Max Domi. Across the board, I like the way this team is built. They've got depth up front. They've got a little snarl on the back end. They're big, they're mean, and they have great goaltending. So I don't think a lot of people were picking Montreal necessarily to win the division. I think a number of people were picking them to maybe make the playoffs out of that division. But I think they win that division. I think they finish first place.
You heard it here if it happens. Last one for you. We got a ton of rookies in the NHL this season. And who's your pick to win the Calder?
So going into the season, so less than a week ago, it was Igor Shesterkin. And I am not changing this pick based on what I saw from Igor Shesterkin in the first game of the season. That has very little to do with it, because I think what we saw from Shesterkin last year in his 12-game sample size is more along the lines of what we will see from him. The Rangers were awful in that game, and he wasn't very good either. He was a part of that, but it was Shesterkin. That being said, it took me 2 days to change that pick. I'm going with Kirill Kaprizov from the Minnesota Wild. He looks like a dynamic, electrifying player. When was the last time the Minnesota Wild had a dynamic, electrifying forward? Marian Gaborik, probably, right? Marian Gaborik was the guy. It's been a lot of vanilla there, grinding vanilla, but vanilla. And this guy comes out of it, and he looks terrific. I think he's going to put up a lot of points. I think he's going to play a lot of minutes in a lot of key situations, and he is going to be a big factor for the Minnesota Wild. And I just like what I've seen from him so far, and the fact that he's similar along the lines of Shesterkin. He's a little older. He's been around. He's played pro hockey. He's not new to pro hockey. He's not a 19-year-old, 18-year-old rookie coming into the league. He's 23 years old, and he can skate. His hands are so silky. I like everything I've seen from him so far.
Completely agree. He looks like a 10-year veteran out there. When I was watching the game, it just seemed so comfortable. He's a big body too. He's not a small guy like Jack who's getting pushed around. He looks like he's been in the NHL for 10 years, and he's going to be an exciting player for Minnesota Wild fans to watch for sure.
Absolutely. He's the guy that they haven't had, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy they haven't had.
Yeah, I picked Igor Shesterkin to win the Calder this year, and I'm sticking with it because in Game 1 we talked about he had 12 high danger chances against, and Georgiev only had 2 in Game 2. So it's very evident that the Rangers didn't give him much help in that first game. But you can't go wrong with either. And like you just mentioned, the age factor to me is a big separate. It separates them from the rest of the pack. Lafreniere is young, Stützle is young, and I think that'll help both Kaprizov and Shesterkin in that race.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I talked about with Lafreniere and Kakko and these types of players. They need time. You need to give them time to develop into professional hockey players, and Kaprizov is a professional hockey player, just in a different league. He has been for a while. Shesterkin is a professional hockey player, has been for a while, just in a different league. So it makes a big difference. They come into a man's league as a man rather than come into the man's league as a teenager trying to become a man.
Yep, I completely agree. And Dan, thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Great insight. And we look forward to reading more of your stuff, listening to your questions in the post-game conference. So keep doing what you do. We really appreciate all your insight. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate what you guys do too. Keep up, right?
Thank you
very much.